In fact, many believe the tide changed when it was even filed as a criminal charge against him. People started to lean in more. But now that he's won, does the next set of events even matter in terms of what the judge will do?
Well, look, I think it matters because it's another reminder that radical Democrat political activists abuse the criminal justice system in New York, all to create a political talking point. Look, Ellie is exactly right, our legal analyst here. This would have never been charged this way if it weren't Donald Trump and he weren't running for president. Should have never been charged this way. He should have never faced this. It was all done so they could call him a convicted felon during the campaign, which, of course, they succeeded at. What they miscalculated is that the American people knew from the get-go that it was partisan politics, and they soundly rejected this in November. So Trump's, I guess, going to get one more bite at the apple here to make the point that these Democrats in New York elected, Alvin Bragg elected, Marchand elected. These people are elected by the people, and they took their jobs in public service and used them for political ends instead of using all of their time to throw the bad people in New York, which there are plenty of them on the streets, in jail. That's the real lasting impact of this, the abuse of the system for political purposes when New York City is descending into a hellhole right now.
Yes, what I realize about this whole situation, liberals want to be calling Trump a convicted felon throughout the 4 years. Reason they are doing that. If you see these people, according to this article, black liberals murder on CNN panel over judge refusing to jail and fine Trump before inauguration. The judge presiding over the hush money case against President-elect Trump on Friday denied his bid to dismiss the case and said he will be sentenced on January 10 days before his inauguration as the 47th president. I concluded that they just want to be calling Trump convicted felon. What else? What is the meaning of this?
So the SDNY, I almost called it the Sovereign District, as you often refer to it, Ellie. I'm going to call it the SDNY instead. All right, Ellie, you and I predicted the idea there wasn't going to be much of a penalty, if any at all, but there's no jail time, no community service, no fines, as we know it now, nothing. What do you think of this decision, given you didn't think the case should have been brought in the first place?
Well, it's an unsatisfying outcome, I think, for certainly the district attorney, but I think it points up ultimately that this was a case of prosecutorial overreach. I don't think there's any real way around that at this point. I think Alvin Bragg would defend this case by saying he looked carefully at the facts and the law, and he believed it was necessary to impose accountability. And I should say, as I always do, Alvin and I were former colleagues at the aforementioned Southern District of New York. He was a colleague and a friend. But I think the vast majority of the American public now views this case as I do, which is that it was a colossal, world historic episode of prosecutorial overreach. He took this case, which the feds had rejected, which the FEC had rejected, which his predecessor as DA had chosen not to charge and later said would have been a huge problem. He crafted a charge against Donald Trump that has never been brought against any other person in American history. He took an expired New York State misdemeanor, piled another expired New York State misdemeanor on top of it, and piled a federal election fraud violation in state court on top of that. Nobody's ever been charged or convicted that way before. And so now the ultimate result of this, Laura, legally is essentially a big fat zero. And politically, I think it backfired badly on Alvin Bragg and on Democrats.
Clearly, Bragg would disagree. And of course, the prosecutors who endeavored to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. But let's set aside for a moment the views you have on this issue and what the judge actually said. The judge didn't view it in this same way. The judge's rationale was looking essentially at the fact that this is a president-elect, but also obviously looking at the balance he'd have to strike between how to actually get accountability in the form of financial payment, one, or also to hold him accountable versus via jail time. His decision, as you know, Ellie, he considered the immunity argument and the DOJ's policy of not prosecuting a sitting president, but that the idea of trying to preserve the finality of it. That statement, I think people are kind of scratching their heads about. What does he mean to preserve the finality of it, given that there'll be appeals and there are ongoing appeals here?
Yeah, so one thing Judge Marchand said in his opinion, which I think is spot on, is nobody really knows. We've never been in this situation before with somebody weeks away from becoming president, and can that person be sentenced. And I think in light of that, Judge Merchan reached a reasonable outcome, which is let's try to move this thing as far along as we can. And in fact, by actually sentencing Donald Trump next week, assuming it goes off as planned, that actually will enable Donald Trump's legal team, if they so choose, to pursue an appeal, to appeal on the exact basis that I just laid out. You can't charge someone with a federal campaign violation in state court. And I think they have a pretty decent chance of winning. So by getting Donald Trump sentenced, what you do is put that chapter of this case behind us and allow Donald Trump, he's really doing Trump's team a favor in a sense of saying, if you do want to pursue your constitutional appeal while you're president, you can go ahead and do it now.
Yes, Trump released this statement. There has never been a president who was so evilly and illegally treated as corrupt Democrat judge and prosecutor have gone against a political opponent of a president, me, at levels of injustice never seen before. Corrupt judges or judges so blinded by their hatred of me and my political ideology to make America great again are making a mockery of the United States judicial system, and the world is watching in disgust. Derek Jack Smith, the evil and sinister prosecutor appointed by Crook Biden to take down, was found to be illegally appointed by a corrupt DOJ and FBI, and all of his many charges against me were dropped or dismissed. His illegal right of my home, Mar-a-Lago, will go down as one of the state tricks ever perpetrated by one candidate, doomed as a rock sleepy Joe on another. With all of this said, I still have confidence that the appellate court will bring justice to America.
Goldilocks decision by the judge here to give people who want Trump to have consequences a conviction that is upheld, but not have to deal with, a sentence which, frankly, was unlikely to actually happen given that he's about to be the president of the United States.
No, and I don't want to sugarcoat it. I think this is a slap in the face to the judicial system. We tell the jurors when they come into that room that your job is very important. This is very serious. We expect them to pour through the information, which they did. They came back with a decision, and now the judge is saying, essentially, it doesn't matter. You found him guilty, but I'm not going to assess any penalty at all. I'm not saying you had to put Trump in jail. That's not likely or reasonable. But there are fines that could have happened, up to $170,000 in fines. Why not assess that and say you were found guilty? Here's a consequence so America can know that if you do something wrong, there will be a penalty to pay.
Yes, listening to all legal scholars, people who actually even support the Democrat Party, they are ashamed that this is even happening. Yeah, this is a case that could have not been brought. So when I see this crazy guy sitting here telling you, there should be consequence for that, it's crazy. This is just an indication to tell you that this was just for political reasons. Yeah, the whole situation, just to prevent Trump from winning or even running. And it backfired bigly. Reason, they are actually ashamed. Like, we should not just let that go. That's what they're doing now. They don't just want to, let's say everything is cancelled. Let's do something, a little bit. Knowing fully well that at the end of the day, appeal court will do something.
I think what we're going to learn through this case more than anything else is the most helpful to President Trump's election. Because when you saw the indictment take place, you saw a lot of money come in, you saw the party consolidate against around President Trump, and that was a good thing. And remember, the original purpose of what at least Trump world felt that this was happening was to try to damage President Trump in his presidential run. Hopefully this will take him off the sideline. Democrats were all over the country saying, if you look at the polls, he's going to lose this much Republican support if we can just get this conviction. And it backfired on him. So I'm not surprised when we get to the very end that it just turned out to be a farce from, it's a farce at the end, just like it was a farce from the very beginning.
And to Dante's point, there was a jury trial. And he was convicted.
But he was convicted in what really was a witch trial. I mean, the whole thing from the very beginning was politically motivated. And like you said, I mean, during the election, we saw how the American public felt about it. They felt that it didn't matter. And my question is, why even have him appear if the judge has already made a decision that there isn't going to be any kind of fine, there's not going to be a probation, there's not going to be any jail time? What's the point?
He said he can appear virtually,
Right,
which again,
right.
you're giving that concession. I understand it's the incoming president of the United States, but I don't want the point to be lost that there was a jury trial where that jury sit through and heard evidence, and whether or not Trump should have been charged, that's not what we're talking about. He was, and he was found guilty based on the evidence. So you can't ignore that and say it was a political witch hunt because a jury said he did something wrong, but now the judge is saying he won't be punished.
The judge, I mean, he is not saying that the jury's verdict is invalid. He's just saying, of the options I have available to me, I'm going to choose the one that has basically no penalty. Isn't that an option that would have been available to him anyway?
No. I mean, I don't know of an option where someone is convicted of 34 felonies and at the end of it you say, okay, all right, we got you, but there's nothing that's going to happen to you as a result. That's just not how our legal system works, and we don't want people to think it works that way.
First-time offender, no priors?
For all of the talk of Donald Trump being the victim of the weaponization of our criminal legal system, he has consistently been treated more generously than the average American would. To the point just made, who do you know who's been convicted on 34 felony counts, doesn't even have to pay a fine, to say nothing of some prison time?
Well, who else would have ever been charged in the circumstances?
Nobody. Exactly, nobody. And also on top of that, we're talking about a future sitting president, okay? I mean, these people are boo-hoo-wine. Hey, the judge didn't fine him. The judge didn't throw him in jail. Trump gets special treatment, blah, blah, blah. Again, charges should not have been brought in the first place. They would not have been brought had the person not been Donald Trump, okay? But the thing is, again, what the judge realizes is that any type of actual real penalty against Trump, again, it just puts the case or the conviction in more jeopardy, right? I mean, it's already probably going to be overturned or appealed, okay? But you don't want to give the Trump team more ammunition to essentially appeal the sentencing before the sentencing comes down, right? And I don't know if these people actually understand the rationale behind it, because let's be real. If you slap Trump with $100,000 fine, realistically, that's not really a punishment either. I mean, Trump is super rich, so it's almost like that ain't nothing either, right? So why even do that if you know that, one, is not really going to hurt Trump, and then two, you're just increasing the risk of Trump being successful in appealing the sentencing? The reason why the judge is essentially not doing anything, he's doing the sentencing this way, including allowing Trump to do it virtually, is to lessen the chances of the sentencing being appealed, right, successfully.
But this is how we treat white-collar criminals in our country. They walk away scot-free. This has been traditional. This isn't any surprise to us.
Well, they don't, after they've been convicted, they don't walk away scot-free. They have to have some, there has to be some consequence, whether it is a financial or some combination of
But it's consistently
financial
smaller than any other type of criminal.
Or some prison time. And so here's a classic example. And by the way, this has been appealed on at least one occasion. I mean, he was convicted of things that a court has found beyond this trial court to be a perfectly valid thing to be convicted of in the state of New York. And so for all this talk about a witch hunt, weaponization, no one can plausibly dispute that he committed the crimes that he was convicted of. They may not like that he was prosecuted, but the fact is, he did the things that he was convicted of.
Steve Chung is saying...
in the Democratic, he wouldn't have got convicted in any other city that is a Republican city or even slightly leading moderate city. It is a jury of Democrats.
But Brian, doesn't that undermine your very point? If you're suggesting that Republicans would have let him off, isn't that in itself political?